Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome back to the Core Women Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Chloe Street, the Chief Connection Officer of Human to Human, a dynamic career coach, keynote speaker, and facilitator transforming how we connect, grow, and thrive. Chloe's mission is to help people uncover their inner game changers, which are defining tools, skills, and mindsets that unlock powerful change. Through retreats, workshops, and coaching, she's helping people tap into their authentic selves and build the life and career they're meant for. Get ready for an inspiring conversation about connection, courage, and conscious growth. Welcome, Chloe.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and thrilled to talk more about my story and what I'm up to these days.
I am excited to have you here. We have so much to talk about today. We're going to jump right into this. But before we dive into your professional journey, if you could describe your life to this point in one word, what would that word be and why?
Oof, that's a good question. It feels like one card pulled from my human-to-human connection game. So I love this question.
Oh, okay.
And we can get into that in a bit. But in one word, I would probably say reclamation.
Okay, tell us more.
When I say the word thank you, when I say the word reclamation, my life has been a ever evolving journey of becoming and unbecoming, as I like to say. So often when we're born, we are born full with a sense of wonder, with deep self-love and self-trust. And over time, through societal conditioning, through experiences, through circumstances, beliefs we develop, acquire, learn, we start to deeply disconnect with ourselves and what's true for us in order to fit a mold or fit what society deems is appropriate. And over time, as I have gotten to know myself in a deeper way, I've understood how far I've drifted from who I was meant to be, who I was, and where I wanted to go with my life. And so I say reclamation in a stance of power and in a stance of ownership and full accountability on how I want to live this life, how I want to make it a meaningful and epic adventure filled with people, places, experiences that make me feel most alive. When we can reclaim what is true for us, what feels aligned for us, we ultimately start to live a life that isn't based on suffering, but rather based on expansion and openness and receptivity. And we give ourselves permission to be who we were always meant to be.
I love that. That is such a great word. And what a full explanation of your meaning and intention with that. But I want to take a step back here. How did you do that reclaiming? Knowing we were conditioned or having that feeling that you've been conditioned, there's certain things that have gotten into your conscious and subconscious in regards to those years of evolution and those folks and experiences that have impacted you in various ways. When did you recognize that you needed to reclaim yourself, who you are, to live a fuller, happier, more prosperous life, so to speak?
I realized when I was working in corporate and I had been incredibly successful on paper. I was working in New York City, where I'm from, born and raised, fulfilling society's definition of success and doing everything that I was told to do, checking all of the boxes. But on the inside, I felt this nagging sense of dissatisfaction or even this inner voice that was a gentle tug. And I didn't know if I could listen to it, acknowledge it, trust it. But I knew that it was lingering in the background when I was going through the motions, almost as if I was living on autopilot, waking up, going into the office, fulfilling my duties and responsibilities, leaving the office, going to bed, waking up and doing the same thing on a routine over and over again. And while so much of my corporate journey filled me with amazing professional tools and skills, I'm so grateful for all of it. And it was so purposeful in getting me to where I am today. So I don't diminish any of it. But I do recognize that when I was in those environments working in human resources, I felt like I wasn't maximizing my full potential because there was a lot of red tape, because there were a lot of politics, because there were a lot of people who were not necessarily open to doing things differently and thinking outside of the box, because not to anyone's fault, it was all they ever knew. And I was someone who really wanted to merge my creative persona, my entrepreneurial spirit, with my professional background and skill set and be innovative in the workplace. And there was a little bit of a tolerance for that, but I wouldn't say that there was an immense tolerance for it. And so I felt boxed in a lot of ways. And within that recognition, I realized that I had never once actually sat with myself to uncover or think about what I genuinely wanted without fear. Because so often we live our life according to what fear tells us to do. We have to do this in order to get here. We have to put ourselves in this position in order to achieve financial success. And a lot of these have tos and shoulds started bubbling up to the surface. And so then I would investigate them. And I actually, for the first time in my life, started to question, was there another way? Is there a different way? And knowing that this is not all there is to being an adult. And so I went on a journey of self-discovery. And that's what prompted my reclamation, was building self-awareness, putting myself in different environments in which I was challenged, moving beyond my comfort zone, and opening myself up to other modalities that ultimately helped me become a more equipped and successful professional in the workplace.
Yeah. And also, as someone who wanted to develop something to help support others as well. And you mentioned living on autopilot. And a lot of people do that because of what you also mentioned, societal norms,
Mm-hmm.
what they attach to, what they hold on to because of what they think defines them. And also feeling that level of comfort and maybe not wanting to feel the discomfort of shifting in a different direction and not knowing those steps. So there were a whole lot of things that could be very imposing and feel very uncomfortable in relation to getting out of that autopilot framework, stepping out, taking the first, second, third step of having that recognition of, I know this will change what I do, how I do it, maybe how much money I make. There were so many variables that could be considered unknowns. And yet a lot of people stay there because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you chose not to. So you are a chief connections officer. Tell us more about being a chief connection officer and how did that evolve into your mission at Human to Human?
When I was working in human resources in my previous roles within organizations and companies, I noticed a big gap. It's what I call the connection gap. And it's that space between how employees want to feel in the workplace and how they actually feel. It's that space between transactional leadership and inspirational leadership, the space between disconnected teams and effective teams. And now that we're in hybrid and remote work environments, that gap has widened immensely. And what I also realized in having that understanding was there was a lack of humanity in the workplace. And I know that's a strong word, but I say this because so often we're treated as our job titles, but yet we are full human beings and we are not just human doings. But often when we go into the workplace, we feel as though we just have to get things done. There's a deadline we need to meet. We're overwhelmed and constantly consuming. And we don't realize that in that vicious cycle, we become productivity monsters. And so there isn't space for us to be all that we are. And if there is space for us to be all that we are, knowing what I now know, I was an all-star then, but I would be a phenomenal rock star now if you plucked me back into corporate environments, which is why I do the work that I do. Because if we can create places and environments for employees to deeply connect on the human level and look for understanding versus looking for who's right, who's wrong, we become far more engaged. We become far more productive, efficient, excited, motivated. all of those juicy, yummy things that every workplace wants their employees to feel, but yet we don't take the time to prioritize it. So when I say that I'm a connection officer, I bring connection into workplaces and environments to help people be more authentic, help them bring out their strong suits, their strengths, work within their zone of genius, so that workplaces become a vibrant hub of excelling cultures, because we spend far too much time at work to feel unhappy. And if we allow connection to be at the forefront of what it is that we're doing, because at the end of the day, life is us betting on ourselves or other people betting on us or us betting on them. It's all about people. So it's all about connection and relationships that we nurture. And if we're not nurturing relationships in work environments or even in personal life, then we always feel the sense of disconnection, because we're living in a time now where connection has never been more accessible. Yet there's a loneliness epidemic. So there's never been more ways in which we can connect, but why do we all feel so disconnected? And so that's where my mission comes in.
I so appreciate that. Thank you for that explanation. Thank you for the depth of what you're feeling that transitioned into something you are doing and that is meaningful. I like what you said about somebody is treated like their job title. I felt that. I felt that in corporate. I think we've all felt that, but we've gone along with it because of that conditioning, because we've been conditioned to believe we are that title. So much so that we don't move into different things because we've attached to it as if it is an identity. As you said, we have so much access to being able to connect, not just communicate, but to connect. We've got so many ways, but we're not connecting. We are not connecting because of the lack of emotional awareness, the lack of being able to understand what it really means to integrate and communicate, not just yes, no, going along and going into autopilot or being an autopilot, but really getting down to that connection. How do we become more connected? How do you help people discover their game changers? Can you share what that looks like in your coaching practice and how it transforms lives?
Absolutely. And the best part about all of this is it's quite simple. And all it takes is intention and presence, because we are constantly distracted from ourselves, from our lives, from our work, within our work. And when I did a 10-day silent meditation retreat almost a year ago, it was something that I once believed I could never, ever do. And in doing that, I had so many profound realizations, one of which is we are literally never single tasking. We are walking and talking, we are driving and listening, driving and talking, eating and listening, eating and watching, eating and talking, typing and looking, right? Whatever we're doing, we're always engaging in multiple things at once. So it's no wonder that our nervous systems are fried. We feel burnt out. We feel stressed beyond our wildest imagination, and not even to mention everything else going on in the world as well that's infiltrating our minds. And through coaching and through culture consulting and through workshops and facilitation, really just giving people the space to separate from all the noise and to be intentional and be where their feet are and really present in what they're engaging in, whether it is a conversation, whether it is a activity, a worksheet, an assessment tool. All of my activities and exercises are designed for you to go inward, for you to build awareness, because what we can't see, we can't address. And everything relies on our perspective. And if we can provoke perspective and see things from a higher point of view, we then open up opportunity and possibility where we once felt contracted or constrained.
So, from coaching to retreats, you create space for deep self discovery. What themes or patterns do you see most often in the people you support?
We're never enough. We feel as though we're always falling short. We feel as though we don't have the answers, and we rely so heavily on external validation. Happiness, connection, that's all an inside job. And so often we wait. We'll be happy when this happens. We'll be happy when that happens, when the promotion comes, when my team delivers to this capacity, when I'm in the relationship, when I hire this person. But happiness lives in the now. And often we're projecting into the future, which there's an important window for goal setting, absolutely. But all we can control is right here and right now.
Absolutely. And sometimes I even go a step further and say, happiness is external, joy is within. And that joy can be cultivated in several ways, but it is exactly what you're talking about, that process of becoming more familiar with oneself,
Mm-hmm.
understanding oneself, giving permission to yourself to stand still, to recognize certain things about yourself, to take a step outside of conditioning, to take many steps outside of just being transactional, being on autopilot, being that person who is staying in fear or reluctance because of what was taught to you or what you were told. It's kind of like that idiom where people say, I do this because this is how my parents did it, or this is the way that they expect me to do it. Well, how do you know it, one, if you don't ask? How do you know, two, if you don't do that self-discovery, that or that self-work? Because that box that you fill yourself in many times is a box that you've also helped create.
Absolutely. And the biggest component here, right, is we are always making up a narrative.
Yes.
The brain is wired to logic its way through life. So, for most of my life, and most of us humans now live from the neck up, and we're always thinking. So, something happens, and then we make a story out of it. And with coaching and with all of these initiatives, right, that human to human delivers, it's all about recognizing that we have to build a relationship with our mind just as we build a relationship with another.
Yeah.
And we have to understand our mind and groom our mind and relate to it, because otherwise we're always at the threshold where our mind is taking us in one direction, but yet we know we want to move in a different direction. And if we can overcome some of those stories, our mind is either our best friend or our own worst enemy. And typically I see clients with their mind being their own worst enemy, whether it's a CEO, whether it's a chief of staff, whether it's an analyst, associate, whatever it might be. We have all of these constructs in the mind as well that ultimately dictate how we act, how we show up, how we serve.
And that narrative can so easily be influenced by what is happening around us. So I like your system, your approach, your modalities of helping others really do that deep self discovery and do that shift from understanding oneself, of being in the moment, being more nurturing to self, understanding their emotions, being able to better then connect and cultivate that connection with others, and being able to live in a world where it's more enjoyable, that you can cultivate that passion. You can connect in a different way.
Mhm.
It's not just transactional, it is real deep connection. Can you share a moment in your own journey where a game changer shifted everything for you? You kind of shared that in the beginning. Has there been any other times along your process where you're like, oh, this is a game changer for me?
Over and over again. So many times this happens to me. And that's the beauty of it, because it's an endless well that is always flowing in terms of offering you quicker ways to access your goals, deeper ways to build a new identity, leading more effectively. You name it, it's helped me in every single aspect of my life, both professionally and personally. So one that's coming to mind big time for me was a massive breakthrough. And I like to create a space in my journal or on my phone. And I give this to my clients as well. It's called the Breakthrough Bank.
Okay.
And it's a list of all of these different moments in time in my life where I've had a massive breakthrough. It's that light bulb moment, whether it's through a tool that I'm using or with a mindset shift or a skill that I've been disciplined in building and developing. And I'd offer it up to your listeners as well to start that on their own time, because it's a really beautiful way to also self-reflect and see how far you've grown, because the mark is always moving.
Yeah.
And when we're in the moment now, right, we're looking for what's next. But yet, if you think about where you were 5 years ago, I imagine where you are now is exactly where you wanted to be. And one of the biggest breakthroughs that I had was this idea or belief that I thought my needs were a burden. And so I thought I wasn't great at communicating and I wasn't articulate. But in fact, it had nothing to do with my communication, but that was the belief that I had, because I couldn't express my needs. So instead of it actually being an issue in my communication and my ability to converse with others, it was actually an internal issue in me thinking that I couldn't express what I needed because I didn't want to burden the other individual.
Mm.
Whether it was delegating, whether it was asking my boss for a raise, whether it was asking my partner for something I would love for them to take care of for me. And when I had that realization that my needs aren't a burden, I was then able to not only go after more of my dreams, but also start to find other ways to connect with people that helped them be there for me as I was there for them, and really opened up channels of authenticity. Instead of feeling like I had to repress or shrink or hide from them, I allowed myself to say yes to myself. And in turn, that allowed me to get to exactly where I wanted to be.
That is great. We each have our own process, but it's also great when you can work with somebody and talk about that process and what's going to work for that other person, right? Because it may look different, feel different, experience different for that person. So we've gone through so much here. We've talked about so many different aspects of the evolution of your journey and how you help people as a chief connection officer, as somebody who is on a mission to really connect human to human. So you also have a podcast called Flow by Chloe. Tell us more about that podcast.
Yes. So the podcast is another way for me to bring inspiring, empowering conversations to the masses. It's been a wonderful way for me to connect with other heart-centered, like-minded individuals and showcase their work and really change the landscape of our society by allowing people to share their gifts and creating another outlet for individuals to feel as though they can go on their own growth journey, their own development journey without having to be in the room with me per se.
Thank you. And as we come to the close of the interview, for someone feeling disconnected from themselves or others, where do you recommend they begin?
Begin with curiosity. And I like to say in my work with my clients as well, and this is something I use over and over again, it's follow your curiosity crumbs. We all have something we're curious about. We have to be willing to walk down that path. And it is quite easy to do so, whether you're curious about painting, curious about sports, curious about different assessment tools. Whatever you're feeling drawn or interested in, engage with those activities. Engage in those conversations. Every time you feel as though you're connecting with someone new and that might feel a little bit uncomfortable for you, the best thing that you can do is utilize curiosity. The more curious you can become, the less self-conscious you are. And you start to ask questions that open up the dialogue, open up the room, whether that's questions to self or with others.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you, Chloe, for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a joy.
You can connect with Chloe on LinkedIn, on Instagram at Human to Human, on Apple Podcast at Flow by Chloe, and at www.humantohumanlife.com.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.